Welcome to Plot Twist Radio, the show where creativity, storytelling, and the unpredictable path of the creative life all collide. I'm your host, Erin Egnatz. Welcome back to Plot Twist Radio, where we dive into the unexpected turns that shape creative lives and careers. Before we jump into today's interview, I have a quick personal plot twist to share with you all. My newest book, The Dud Witch, which is a laugh-out-loud fantasy about magic, mayhem, and messy reinvention, is officially out into the world. This book has been such a labor of love for me, and I can't explain it, but it is by far my favorite that I've ever written. That's not to negate from The Jaded Knight or The Key to Wonderland or Professionally Unprofessional. It's just that this one, I felt like I was a much more accomplished writer, and the story kind of captivated me and wouldn't let go, so much so that I'm already working on books 2 and 3, which should be out later in the year. At its heart, The Dud Witch is about owning who you are when the world expects something else, and discovering that sometimes your biggest flaw turns out to be your greatest power. If you love sharp humor, magical chaos, and just a touch of romantic tension. Okay, not just a touch. There's a ton of romantic tension in this one. The Dud Witch is available now. It's free with Kindle Unlimited, and I cannot wait to hear what you guys think. So please go out and get it, and do let me know. I'm really interested in the feedback. Now, speaking of reinvention, today's guest proves that reinvention has no expiration date. Trinette Faint has built an extraordinary career spanning international modeling, work with major Hollywood production companies, years inside Google, publishing novels, and now carving out powerful space as a screenwriter and a filmmaker. Her latest short film, one she wrote, produced, and starred in, has already made waves, earning acceptance into the Berlin Film Festival and winning her Best Actress honors. And with her television pilots landing as semi-finalists in the ScreenCraft competition, Trinette continues to redefine what success looks like on her own terms. Today we're talking about reinvention, perseverance, storytelling, and what it means to keep evolving at every stage of life. Trinette, welcome to Plot Twist Radio. Hi, how are you? And welcome to the show.
Thank you, Erin. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. Could you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yes. So obviously my name is Trinette. I should say obviously because I didn't say that before. But I'm Trinette Faint. I am a screenwriter, a filmmaker, an actress, and a creative entrepreneur. I'm based on the East Coast in Boston, but I speak to you today from the suburbs of Chicago, from my hometown for the holidays. Yeah.
So, as you mentioned, you've lived several creative lives already: model, writer, screenwriter, entrepreneur. When you look back, what feels like the through line that's always been there for you?
Ooh, the through line. I think just really basically a desire to want and need to express myself creatively. You know, I've done some different things, and I've also worked as a photographer once upon a time. I've always had this kind of desire to express myself creatively, and it can come really through any medium. That's probably the through line through all of those things. If I weren't expressing myself creatively, I would not be a happy person or fulfilled in any kind of way, you know?
Absolutely. That's exactly how I am. I started off as a nurse and that didn't work for me. So I switched to a history professor because I loved history, but it wasn't really the creative part of it. So once I started writing, I realized, that this is it for me and that's what makes me happy. So I absolutely get what you mean about the creative people. Once you let that out, you feel whole almost.
Yeah, it really does complete you in a way. Everything that you may think you've worked out in the course of your normal regular life, you sometimes find that you haven't, and it's just this really therapeutic excuse me, therapeutic way of learning more about yourself also, and getting to the core of who you are.
100%.
Yeah.
So you began modeling in France, which is awesome. What did the early international experience teach you about confidence, visibility, and navigating powerful spaces?
Well, I actually started when I was around 16 or 17 in Chicago. And I eventually did get myself to Paris. But I will say, first being in Chicago, that was a really good sort of training ground for just existing in a big city, and especially like being there on my own. Um, I would go up to Chicago to do different jobs, and I went to modeling school when I was younger in my teens, and just like really navigating adult spaces and learning how to, protect myself, all those things. So by the time I got to Paris, I wasn't afraid at all of being in a city. Like I didn't speak French, but that didn't seem to bother me so much. I just always felt, that I have to like behave like I own there, like I belong there. Excuse me, like I belong there. From like my walk to how I interacted with people. Um, it was a really great, I guess, springboard coming from Chicago, and that sort of training has served me well over the course of my life because the things that you learn as a teenage model and how you have to carry yourself and look after yourself and advocate for yourself, quite honestly, are things that are so useful, um, you know, as you grow and go into different things.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
You've worked with major players, Google, Matt Damon, Will Smith production company, is that correct?
Yep. It is. It is. I've
What
had
did those environments teach you that later kind of shaped your storytelling?
Uh, boy, I think, the confidence and stuff that I learned as a young model certainly helped in those spaces because in all of those areas, I was around very powerful people, doing very adult business, you know? And I also had to act like I belonged as well, from a film set to, a meeting with an executive team, let's say at Google. It's kind of the same level of confidence and self-assuredness that you have to carry with you. Um, so yeah, I guess that's probably the biggest thing. Just really having faith in myself and confidence in myself to get through those big tough days sometimes.
Absolutely, I agree. As the saying goes, confidence is key. Without it, you sell yourself short. So I
Yeah,
absolutely agree with that.
yeah,
So
1000%.
as you mentioned earlier, you've pivoted multiple times by choice, not by force. What gave you the courage to keep reinventing yourself rather than just staying in one niche?
Mm. I've followed my curiosity, for most of my life, whether it be moving to a different city or trying a different, professional direction. There was always kind of a reason behind it. And just knowing that I wanted to have like a variety of like life experiences. Like I'm not the sort of person who would have gotten a job, at 23 right out of college and stayed at that same company forever. Like, it's just not the way the world works anymore, number 1. But, like, number 2, I just continue to be, like, a very curious person. So, I've traveled and I've moved and always just kind of in search of, a new experience, like, really understanding cultures and environments and things like that, from meeting people to, like, food to, like, living, all these different things, they just kind of, for me, have made me kind of this whole person as I go through life.
Yeah, that's so cool. You also said that you got a feature film writing certificate from UCLA, correct?
Yes, I did. I did. When I was 52, I earned that. Yeah. So last summer, June of 2024, I earned my feature film writing certificate. I'd already published my novels, but I really wanted to learn how to write screenplays. And one of my novels I'm adapting into a series. So I started taking these classes and just really, got into it. It's a very different art form, way of writing than any other one, but it's been really a lot of fun and I've really taken to it. Like once I kind of started going down that road, I was like, "Oh yeah, this feels like home. This feels like it's it." So I took, all these classes, like my required classes and stuff, and I was doing them at nights and weekends, like while I was working. at Google. I was doing the courses online, and yeah, then I went out to LA for my ceremony and earned my certificate. So that's definitely like one of the bigger things that I'm proud of that I've achieved in my life.
Absolutely. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So, you said you've published 2 novels and now you're writing on the screen. You mentioned it a little bit that it's a different kind of writing. Do you find one easier than the other?
No, no. They're both hard. That first draft is, deadly in either one.
I've been there too. What is
Yeah.
your writing process like? For me, when I start writing a novel, I don't really outline. I kind of just go for it, and then everything that was in my mind when it's finally written down, it doesn't look as good on paper. So I go through a whole bunch of revisions. I mean, does your product look remotely close to what you first started with, or does it evolve quite a bit?
It certainly evolves. It takes on a whole new shape. I struggle with outlines too. I've really tried to write towards an outline, but it doesn't really work for me. Like if I sit there and I say, okay, this is what's going to happen here, here, boom, 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 boom. Okay. And then I will sit down and write it, and something completely different will come out of my fingers than what I'd written on the outline. And I'm like, why is this happening? Like, I literally thought about the story for weeks and weeks and wrote this outline. But what is coming out of my hands is very different than what I wrote on a page. So now I'm not like, super precious about it. I just, kind of write. Like generally I will have the story in my head and like kind of know where it's going. And then exactly to your point, just do like a billion rewrites. And then like I find that about the third or fourth rewrite that's when the story starts to like reveal itself. And then, make deeper edits and like it gets really into the meat and bones of the story. And then from there, it's kind of just refining it. But these rewrites are endless. But I will say when I did my short film Party Pants, I know we haven't talked about that yet, but I recently made my first film and I was awarded Best Actress in the Berlin Indie Film Festival. When I wrote that, I didn't really overthink it much at all. Like I had the story in my head and, it only took me like really a couple hours to write it. And I liked what I had written and I just made the movie and it's been like very well received. So there's two schools of thought, like obviously you do have to do a ton of rewrites and like really, get into it that way. But then there's also something to be said for not getting in your head too much and just doing it and just putting it out there and kind of seeing what happens. So this is my first time on that approach. I mean, I can't say that everything I write here out will be like that, but it really worked for this one.
Yes. So let's pivot over to your short film. Like you said, you won Best Actress, which congratulations. That's amazing.
Yeah.
What was that moment like for you when you heard the news?
Oh my God, it was completely surreal. I had just had lunch with a friend of mine, and we were standing in her kitchen when I got the notification, and we just stared at each other for like 10 minutes. I was like, "Can you believe this?" And she's like, well, actually, she's very supportive. She's like, "Yeah, I can. You've been like working towards it." And I was just like slack-jawed, completely like dumbfounded by the whole thing. And also the film was just accepted into a festival in Barcelona as well. So I'm going to Barcelona in February for that one. So it's really gotten a lot of very positive feedback and stuff. And I'll be curious to see what happens with the other outstanding festivals that I've not yet heard from. So I'm manifesting lots of goodness by Berlin.
That is so cool. I am so interested in the film festivals. I never really, I guess from being an audience member, I never really realized how important these film festivals were until I started doing plot twists and I started talking to a lot of creators and they're like, that's all I want. So congratulations on
Yeah.
that.
Thank you. Thank you.
What was the biggest challenge with writing and producing the short film? Because you kind of wore every hat with the project.
I did. I did the whole thing soup to nuts. Wrote it, produced it, co-directed, and obviously I starred in it. Um, the the biggest challenge was I think it was because it was my first time doing everything and it was a huge learning experience. That was certainly a challenge, and I was, high stress, throughout the whole process. And then working with the editor at the end to make sure that it was, as I wanted it to be. Um, but it was fully worth it. I mean, as for as stressful as it could be at times, it also felt like, wow, I've like really found my space, my groove. You know, it was an incredible feeling just doing it and getting to the other side of it.
So, has there been any moments where the visibility from it has been more like a gift or a challenge, or kind of both, or just a gift?
Yeah, just a gift, at this point. I'm just so grateful for everybody who has watched, and I hope all your listeners watch it as well. Yeah, so it's been a gift. It's been very, I guess, validating for all the hard work that I put into it. And, I mean, the years long work, the work didn't start, the moment I wrote it down and call to action. This was years of doing all these creative things that kind of culminated into this, all the behind the scenes stuff, as you know.
Yes. So, what can you tell us? Because I don't want to be a spoiler. I'm always afraid to do that. But what can you tell us about the film?
Yeah, no worries. The story is about a woman named Fiona, and she wakes up, as the poster says, on the wrong side of the baguette. She faces her like anxieties and insecurities on this fateful morning, all through the lens of never having been to Paris. And, she kind of takes her husband on this journey with her throughout the day. And, she's not having a good day. And it's really triggered by this pair of like ridiculous pants that she has that no longer fit. So she's dealing with becoming an empty nester. Her daughter's gone to college. Their daughter's gone to college, and her changing, menopausal, perimenopausal body, and like all that brings. So she has a pretty kind of epic meltdown, I think, which is why so many people can relate to it and why it's been so well received.
That's what I was gonna say. We've all been there. We've all had those
Yes,
moments. So,
yes,
yes, it's very relatable.
we all have those pair of pants.
Oh my gosh, do I ever? I just need to throw those away. Is there any of you in the character?
Oh, yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, I came up with the idea because I was at the gym one day. This would have been, I guess, in the springtime. And there was a physical trainer there, and she was working with her client. And this woman had like the best legs and ass I'd ever seen. And I'm started getting like competitive, like in my head. She's working her out and stuff. And I'm like, oh my goodness, never mind that this lady was probably half my age, that she could have been my daughter, because I'm 54. So she was probably easily 23, 24. But I start like in my head, I'm like, oh my goodness, And then I also had a pair of pants that the year before had fit much better for some reason. And I was like, what in the hell has happened in the last year that these pants don't fit as like well as they did before? And so with that in my head, I just kind of started writing, and I just got it all out. And I was like, whew, after like I wrote it. So she's definitely in me. I don't have children like she does. But I did have a dog for almost 17 years that passed last year. So I do understand like that, a sense of loss, So I was dealing with that on my own. But yeah,
Oh,
so there's
I'm
definitely
sorry.
pain there. Thank you.
That's always tough.
And I'd had her for 16 and a half years.
Wow.
So, through like the really biggest moments of my life. And she lived everywhere with me. We did all these road trips, So she's very much a part of my life. And then to lose her, because they don't live forever, was very tough. So there was a bit of my own grief in Fiona's pain, I guess. Yeah.
Absolutely, I understand that. So, what would you tell women who feel like it's too late to pivot to creativity?
Oh, nothing is ever too late. I mean, my goodness, nothing is too late. You just really have to start. Like whatever your thing is, whatever is itching at you, just make very small steps every day or every couple days, have your big goal in mind and just do tiny things. And before you realize it, you will have made like a gigantic leap. I mean, perfect example. When I started my writing classes at UCLA, I started those because I was on a mental health break from Google. At the time, I was on a team with a really toxic manager, something that most people can relate to these days. And, I had these crazy, terrible headaches that wouldn't go away. And my doctor was like, I'm kind of concerned that you've had this headache for however many days it had been at that point, and it hasn't gone away with medication and stuff. So she sent me to the ER. So I was at the ER all day thinking, is my brain bleeding or is like something very serious? And I realized that I'd been having that particular headache since I'd been working at Google, and I'd been having it more since I had been on that team. So my body had been telling me that that wasn't it for me and, to, chart another path, but we get caught up in the quote realities of life. Obviously, we have bills to pay, we have mortgages, all that stuff. I'm not discounting that. Anyway, the ER doctor, she just said one sentence to me and it changed my life. She was like, Trinette, jobs don't love you back. You taking a break. So I was out for a couple of months, and in that space, I was able to like really think and hear myself and decide like, okay, the first 50 years of my life have looked like this, but I want them to look differently. And what do I need to do for that? And so because I'd wanted to start learning how to write screenplays, I just signed up for a class. The first one was like a very kind of basic entry level class, and I signed up for it and I started doing that, and that subsequently led to, like, doing tons of, like, writers' workshops and groups and getting to know people and reading people's work and things like that. And, I did a whole host of things, like, while I was out on that break, and then I just, like, continued it. It just became, like, part of who I am. So before I knew it, I had earned my certificate after about a year and a half of classes and workshopping my stories and stuff. But it all, like, really served this purpose, and I could not have known it then, but when Party Pants came around, or I should say, like, last year when I lost my job and I was kind of forced to pivot, um, I decided, "Oh my goodness, like, this is actually a blessing. I have, like, this time to, like, really kinda push into what I wanna do." And because of, like, those small steps of just starting a writing class and, over the last year, when I took a bunch of acting classes and my French classes, like all these different things, which culminated into Party Pants, like when I look back now, I can see that just because I started, you know, 2 years ago with these small steps, that it culminated in this big thing. And it turned out to be this huge leap ultimately that has like really put me on a different path, a different direction. And I was still working full time up until, or a day job, I should say, until last year. I charted off on my own path here. So that's just the thing. Like, you never know, like, starting something small today, where it's going to lead you in 6 months, in a year, or whatever it is. But you just have to start, because you'll find that once you start, you won't be able to stop, because you've started like scratching that thing inside of you to get to where you want to be. But you just have to do it. You can't be afraid. There's no age limits, for writing. There's characters of all different ages, shapes, and sizes. And it doesn't matter what you're creating, there's no age limit to it, so you just have to do it.
Excellent advice. I agree 100% with that. So, if you could go back and speak to teenage Trinette, what
Mm.
would you tell her?
I would tell her to probably buy real estate earlier.
Yes. That's a good one.
Yeah, I went to college in Boston in the '90s, where at the time, in the neighborhood I was living in the South End when I was in school, was quite affordable. It was still on the edge kind of thing. Now you can't afford to walk down the street over there. It's completely changed. So that is definitely that's something that I would tell my younger self. And I would also tell her, gosh, I don't know, probably save money earlier as well.
Yeah, that's also a good one.
Yeah, yeah. you know?
Actually, that's probably the best answer. I ask that a lot, and that's probably the best answer. 100%. I wish someone would have told me that. I
Yeah.
probably wouldn't have listened, but I wish someone
I
would have.
know, it's hard to, like, listen. I'm sure people did tell me that, but, at that age, you're like, "Ooh, I'm going on spring break," or whatever it is, you know?
Exactly.
You gotta live too, so.
For sure, for sure. So what is your next chapter?
Well, I'm working on, a couple of different other stories right now. Working on I'm gonna be hopefully, prayerfully, like, fundraising for a trailer for one of my series to get it made. I just returned from a month in Europe, in France, the Netherlands, and London, where I just took an acting class at RADA in London. So that was amazing. So I'm hoping to do more of that. So essentially, I'm just going to, keep pushing into my creativity. I've just been following the signs and following my instinct, and, winning that award with the Berlin Indie Festival was a huge sign, and now getting into Barcelona. So I'm like, okay, this is a good sign. Like, I'll keep knocking on this door, keep pushing this one open. And so, we'll see. I have this feeling that 6 months from now will be will be almost unrecognizable, because there will be so many blessings because of all the hard work that I've done. I'm manifesting it all, that it will happen. So,
Absolutely, it'll happen for sure. So where can the audience find you and your film?
the film is on YouTube. So if you type in "party pants," you probably have to put my name, because I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff on there about party pants, I suppose. But my website, Trinette Faint, Trinette, and then faint, like you pass out. F as in Frank, AINT. If I don't say that, I will get saint, and I will get paint and stuff. So faint. And my Instagram is also very good, Trinette.faint. So
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I have really enjoyed this conversation.
thank you, Erin. This was a lot of fun.
What an inspiring conversation. Trinette's journey is such a powerful reminder that success doesn't follow one timeline. Sometimes the most exciting chapters come after we think we're supposed to have it all figured out. If today's episode resonated with you, make sure to follow, rate, and share Plot Twist Radio so more listeners can discover these incredible stories of reinvention and creative courage. And be sure to follow Trinette Faint to keep up with her upcoming film projects and screenwriting work. We'll have our links in the episode description. Until next time, remember, sometimes the best moments in life come from the twist you never saw coming. Thanks for listening.